Hey, Freshwater. I hope you are each having an amazing week. Now, I have a question for us. How would you describe life in our current world? If we asked this question to 100 people, we would likely get a range of answers, and I would bet in that range of answers we would hear things like fast, frenetic, busy, wearying. Many experts agree that we live in the most dynamic age in the history of man. Things are always happening. And at the center of this frenetic pace is our work. Many Americans work long hours, and it's even celebrated in popular culture. The man or woman who overworks to move the company vision forward is enshrined as a heroic example of success. We've even coined terms for it like hustle and grind. We work hard during the day, and then we feel the pressure to work early mornings or late at night to get more things done. Biblically, work is a great thing. God invented work, and He assigned Adam to care for the garden even before sin entered into the world. Work is good and it's God honoring, but God also made us human. We're wired with limitations on our energy, our mind, our strength. And while work is so very good, as humans, we also have to rest. Companies are coming to this realization. They're realizing that rested employees are actually better, healthier employees. In 2019, Microsoft Japan cut back to a 4-day work week for a month. And guess what? Employee productivity jumped by 39% during that time. Volkswagen in Germany, in an attempt to cut down after-hour work, actually shut down their computer servers in the evening so that employees couldn't get into their phones' emails or messages or send any. In addition, studies have shown that employees that take a regular vacation are actually more productive than those that the employees that didn't. Author Bridget Schulte said, "When you look at human performance science, there's such great evidence that working all those hours really doesn't get you where you want to go. While you may be able to work a few 60-hour weeks, eventually you will be so burnt out that you lose the ability to be creative and innovative." Even the secular work world is realizing we have to rest. Humans were created for it. And to Christians, this sounds eerily familiar and maybe even biblical. This past Sunday, Pastor Scott continued with the second week of our Own It series. And one of the disciplines he accentuated was the importance of a day of Sabbath each week, a day of rest. Sabbath is deeply rooted in Scripture. In Genesis, God creates all things in 6 days. And then in Genesis 2:2, it says that God rested from all his work on the seventh day. And this creates for humans a weekly rhythm for us. 6 days of work and activity, and a seventh day of rest and worship. Throughout the Old Testament, God is constantly reminding Israel to keep the Sabbath day holy, to remember to take a Sabbath rest. And in the New Testament, Jesus himself adheres to the Sabbath. But in our world, a true Sabbath day seems almost impossible. But as we know, the way of Jesus and his kingdom is countercultural. In Jesus' kingdom, the way up is down, the way down is up, and the key to kingdom progress begins with rest and worship and not work. Our world is restless, but Jesus' life was restful. In a world where hustle is glorified as if energy is unlimited, how do we rest well? One of those rhythms of grace is to take a weekly Sabbath day. For most of my life, I thought a Sabbath day meant going to church on Sunday, but this is only a small portion of the spirit of the Sabbath. The Sabbath day is an opportunity to stop, to rest, and to worship God with open eyes. And at the heart of the Sabbath day is an act of faith or trust. We release to God everything that has threatened to make us restless during the week, and we entrust those things to Him. As Pastor Mark Buchanan says, Sabbath is turning over to God all those things: our money, our work, our status, our reputations, our plans, and our projects. We choose to rest and trust that God continues to work for us when we're resting. We confess again that we're limited, but He's unlimited. It is a rhythm of grace. With our actions, we're saying to God, I am not enough, but God, you are. As Henry Nouwen points out, we live in a culture where our identity is actually rooted in how well we do, how much we possess, and what others say about us. Alan Fadling adds that in our culture, if I do more, I am more. If I have more, I am more. If more people like and recognize me, I'm more valuable. But as we Sabbath, we release this identity, the identity of the world. Rest allows us to find our identity in God, His provision, and His grace through Jesus Christ. Sabbath is surrender. Sabbath is actually an act of trust that says, God, I'm going to take what you give me from your hand into my hand, and that's going to be enough. In fact, this is the foundation of our faith in the gospel. I couldn't earn my salvation through my good works. Instead, when I failed, Jesus earned my salvation for me on the cross. And now my identity is rooted in that fact. I'm loved and forgiven by God through Jesus Christ. And this grace actually filters down then into my ability to work. I work from a place of worship and not of feeling like I'm obligated or feeling like someone's breathing down my neck. And then I rest from a place of worship and trust because I don't have to accomplish everything because Christ himself accomplishes for me. As I said last week, I've been on a journey for the last 4 years in establishing certain disciplines in my life, the disciplines that I've witnessed in the life of Christ. And in those last 4 years, I've tried to establish a stable Sabbath day of rest each week. And I just wanted to share a few things that I've learned along the way from these Sabbath days. The first thing is this, is that I've tried to set aside an extended period of time for Sabbath. Now, many of us have obligations that spill into our off day. And we need to mow the lawn or we need to clean the house. But the Sabbath is different from an off day. It's a time to stop from our labor and rest in God. Now, if you can't get a full day, you could start with a half day after your obligations are done. And this can be any day of the week. It doesn't have to be Sunday. Many work or have other responsibilities on Sunday or on Saturday. And so you choose a day when you're off and you set it aside and you say, this will be a time of Sabbath and rest. You commit that time to the Lord. And that's the second thing. When I start my Sabbath time, I often want to read a psalm or I listen to a song that commits that day to worship and trust and rest in God's provision. And then after I do that, I continue on with my worship and I do a third thing. I do something that's life-giving to me. So I try not to give any time to work. I don't even want to give a thought to it. The Sabbath is a day unto the Lord. And so anything that needs to be done, God is working on it for me. And from my perspective of trust, everything else can wait. So instead, I find something life-giving to do. I go do at least one thing that just fills me with life and connects me closer to the heart of God. One of the activities on a Sabbath that I like to do is I like to run or work out. So for some of you, running is actually not life-giving, it's life-taking, or sometimes almost literally. But for me, it recharges me. So I just feel close to the Father's heart when I'm out running or when I'm working out, when my blood's pumping. So find that thing that gives you life. That thing when you are done with it that you can say that God was here with you. Do that on your Sabbath. Another thing I like to do is just enjoy good company. One of the things that I lose in the rush of work is relationship. With a full to-do list, it's too easy for me to ignore the people in my life. But on Sabbath, I try to intentionally breathe deep and enjoy those that I love the most. My family and my friends, when I'm right, get my undivided time and attention. Another thing that I like to do is I like to not plan a ton on the Sabbath. I have a stretch of time where nothing is planned. Now, many of us have our days scheduled from sunup to sundown, and that's me on a typical day. But on the Sabbath, I like to have at least a portion of the day that is unplanned. I can linger, I can move around slowly, there's nowhere to be and nothing to do. And this allows our family to pick up spur of the moment and go do something unplanned if we want. The space is open space, just to be. A Sabbath day allows us to stop producing. We trust in God. He produces for us and we find our identity in Him. There's so much more that could be said about biblical work and rest, but there's another video or another sermon, there's another time for that. The biggest thing in this is committing to a Sabbath day where we say to God, we're going to rest in you, your provision, your goodness. We're going to love you and we're going to worship you. And this is completely for you, God. My heart is centered on you because you provide everything for me. So may God bless our families and our cities as we rest in Him. I love you all.